In the brittle hush of a winter dawn, the barn door groaned like a secret kept too long, dust swirling in the pale light that cut through the frost. Elias Tanner stepped inside, the cold clinging to his breath, the warmth of the timber still holding against the chill. He was early, as always, the sun not yet breaking the horizon, but he'd already saddled his gelding and ridden 2 miles into town. Now he stood in the narrow aisle of Harlan Creed's horse barn, his silence as steady as a man who hurried for little except the grief he could never outrun. Tugging his gloves tighter, he moved past iron stalls, a dappled gray mare eyeing him as straw stuck to his boots. Elias carried the quiet of a man who neither expected nor offered conversation. He was here to buy a workhorse, nothing more. But something was wrong. From a stall near the back, second from the left, came a sound that didn't belong. Not the stamp of hooves or the jangle of a bit, but a ragged human breath sharp against the cold. Elias froze, then moved slowly, boots soft on the straw. He didn't call out, just eased around the stall's edge. There, slumped behind a wall of old hay bales, was a woman. Her wrists were bound with twine cut from horse rope, her face mottled with fading bruises, lips cracked, eyes swollen but fierce, with a defiance that hadn't been beaten out. Her cotton dress was torn at the shoulder, her boots gone, ankles scabbed. Yet her back was straight. She didn't beg or cry. She just looked at him, her gaze heavy with the weight of being seen too long by the wrong men, distrusting even the quiet ones. Elias didn't speak. He exhaled once, deep through his nose, then crouched. She flinched as he reached for her wrists. Behind them, spurs scraped the floor. "Well now," said a voice too slick for this rough country. "You're early, Tanner." Harlan Creed stepped forward. Trim coat, polished boots, silver hair slicked back like he'd been born smug. He didn't glance at the woman, just past her like she was a misplaced saddle. "Horse is a fine beast," Creed said, gesturing to the next stall. "Strong shoulders, steady gait. I'll sweeten the deal." Elias stayed crouched, untying the knots with steady fingers. Creed clicked his tongue. "She's part of the sale," he said. "Call it a bonus." No response. "She's a runaway," Creed pressed. "Claimed she was somebody's niece, but she ain't no one's anything. Found her sneaking through my stables 2 weeks back. Been feeding her, keeping her out of trouble. You know how it is, a lonely thing like that. Someone's got to make choices for her." The rope fell away. Elias stood. "Is she yours?" he asked, voice low, flat. Creed laughed. "Come on now, don't be difficult. You want the horse or not?" Elias turned, facing him fully. "Is she yours?" Silence stretched tight, pulling at the barn's walls. "She's in my care," Creed said. Elias didn't blink. He stepped back, offered his hand to the woman. She didn't take it, but stood, slow and stiff, wincing as blood returned to her legs. Barefoot on the straw, she walked out of the stall beside him, wordless. They didn't take the horse. They took the cold. Outside, the wind sliced like truth as they reached Elias's wagon. The town was stirring, curtains twitching, whispers spreading like thaw water, slow, then rushing. A man like Elias didn't bring home strange women. A woman like her didn't belong in decent places. She curled under a wool blanket in the wagon's back, and he didn't ask her. She didn't offer it, just stared ahead, as if she'd seen too much of the past to guess the future. At his cabin, Elias opened the door, lit the lantern, let her enter first. The hearth was cold, but he laid kindling without speaking and struck the flint. The fire caught, slow then steady. She stood, eyes scanning for exits. He noticed, said nothing. He set bread and warmed coffee on the table, sat across from her, and waited. Not for her story, but for her to eat. She ate like a starved creature, Yet her gaze held pride. Each bite chewed as if dignity still lived between her ribs. He slid a folded blanket toward her. She hesitated, then tucked it under her elbow. Still seated. She wouldn't lie down. Not yet. That night, Elias checked the barn latch, pausing to gaze at the frost-laden pines, his breath clouding like smoke. No horses were tied outside, no payment made, no promises spoken. Just a woman behind a stall, and a man who didn't believe in leaving people where they didn't belong. Inside, the fire cracked. She watched it like it spoke a language she'd forgotten, listening for the first time in years. Elias sat by the window, snow settling over a fence that once marked his sorrow's edge. It no longer felt like a boundary. It felt like a beginning. Slow, quiet, unfinished, worth staying awake for. If you've ever found something good where you weren't meant to look, you know. Sometimes a man goes to buy a horse and brings home the part of himself he thought was lost. The first morning, she hadn't spoken. Elias found her at dawn, curled on the porch bench, blanket tight around her knees, as if waiting for someone to tear her away. Her bare feet hovered above the boards, not trusting the ground. He didn't ask why she was there, just handed her coffee, steam curling into the pale light, and stood beside her, eyes on the hills for something yet to come. She took the mug with both hands, didn't drink, didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. The fire hadn't died overnight. He'd fed it long after she'd fallen asleep on the floor, wrapped in the blanket he'd once buried his dog in. She hadn't taken the bed, hadn't glanced at the room, just settled in the corner, like she belonged nowhere. That morning, Elias headed to the north pasture to fix loose fence boards, stubborn against the wind. He left her bread, eggs, a basin of water. By midday, the food was gone, the basin empty. But she wasn't in the house. He found her in the barn, not hiding, just sitting in the hay by the stall, where she'd been bound, staring at dust motes in a beam of light. Elias watched from the doorway. She wore his flannel shirt, too big for her shoulders, her torn dress rinsed and dripping from a peg. He didn't ask why she'd washed it. He knew she meant to leave, but hadn't. That afternoon, she lit the stove without asking, fumbled through his shelves, cracked eggs into a pan. Her bruised hands were steady. She didn't speak, as the scent of frying yolk filled the kitchen, just placed the plate before him. He nodded. She sat by the window, arms folded, the table a shield against kindness. She couldn't reach. He ate, sipped water. "Mara," he said, the word slipping like an apology. She looked up. "Is that your name?" A long silence, then barely a breath, she said, "Yes." The sound cracked something in the room. Not the walls. Something closer to the heart. That evening, Ada Morrow arrived, knocking with the back of her knuckles, entering without invitation. Tall, with silver-streaked hair wrapped in a sage green shawl, weathered by winters, she brought thread and sugar Elias hadn't requested. Her eyes flicked to Mara, still by the fire, braced for scorn, and didn't soften or harden. "Well," Ada said, setting her basket down, "the wind's turned mean." Elias nodded. "It'll freeze by morning." Ida's gaze shifted. "She staying long?" Elias didn't answer. Mara did. "Just till I figure what's next." Ada raised an eyebrow. Plenty of folk in town figuring the same. Mara's jaw twitched. "I ain't folk." "No," Ada agreed, "but they'll talk like you are." That was the truth of it. The next morning, Elias rode to town for salt and oats, not lingering. Word had bloomed like frost on windows. A man who spoke little had taken in a bruised, barefoot girl with no family. Whispers curled under doorway ears. Deputy Brandt asked, casual-like, if Elias needed help at the ranch. When Elias said no, Brandt leaned on the counter. "Just making sure she's there on her own will." "She is," Elias said. "'Cause Harlan came in, riled. Claims she owes him for boarding." Says she ran with his money. Elias picked up the oats and left. Back home, Mara wasn't in the house or barn. He found her behind the shed, hands in the cold dirt, planting seeds in rows too precise for chance. "What are you doing?" he asked. She didn't look up. Found seeds in the pantry. Thought, maybe come spring. Her voice caught. "I don't know where I'll be come spring." He crouched beside her, not too close. "You can stay." She shook her head. "I ain't yours to keep." "I didn't say that." The soil clung to her fingers like guilt. "People will say things, they already are." Her eyes, tired, met his. "Why are you being kind?" He didn't answer, just stood, brushed dirt from his palms, and went inside. He returned with boots, worn, laces frayed, his own. Walked in for 6 years along the property line. He set them down. She touched them like she didn't deserve to, then slipped them on. A week passed. She began sleeping in the bed, unasked, unthanked. One night, by the fire, she picked up his wife's sewing basket. He flinched, not visibly, but she noticed, her hand freezing mid-stitch. "I can put it back." He stared at the thread trembling in her fingers. "No," he said. "She'd like it being used." That night, as the wind howled, Mara sang a faint hum, an old lullaby mothers pass to babies through storm nights. It filled the cabin like breath. Elias didn't interrupt, didn't look at her. But when she stopped, he said, "My wife sang that when the pipes froze." Mara hummed it again, softer, like a prayer. Days later, Harlan Creed rode up, boots too polished for mud, grin sharp as a blade. Mara froze at the window, backed away. Elias stepped outside, sighed before she could speak. "You come for the horse?" he asked. Harlan dismounted, brushing invisible dust from his coat. "I come for what's mine." Elias didn't move. "Got papers?" Harlan pulled them from his coat, signed by her kin, her stepbrother, granting rights of labor exchange. She's property till her debt's worked off. Elias read them slowly, folded them smaller, tucked them in his coat. "She ain't property." "She ran," Harlan said. "That's breach of contract. I could have the law on this." "Then do." Harlan's grin cracked. "She ain't worth the trouble. You'll see. She'll run again. That's what girls like her do." Elias turned toward the cabin. "Then I'll run too." Harlan left, but Mara didn't sleep that night. Nor did Elias. He sat by the hearth, she by the door. At sunrise, she stood, left a note on the table, and walked out in his boots, coat cinched tight, head high. The note read, "Thank you for never asking me to smile." By the time he read it, she was halfway to town, walking not like an escapee, but like someone choosing her story's next page. Alice understood. He'd once walked away from his life, not to flee, but to remember what it meant to stay. Snow turned to sleet that week, sharp drops pelting roofs like gravel, glazing paths with misery. Mara didn't return the first day or the second, but Elias checked the road each morning, not watching, just noting. He kept her coat by the door, not expecting her return, but not ready to believe she wouldn't. 3 nights after the note, a knock. Not timid, not panicked, just there. She stood on the porch, soaked, hair plastered to her cheeks, fingers blue with cold. Her eyes didn't seek welcome, only space. He stepped aside. She passed, dripping on the floorboards. He brought a towel. She dried her hair roughly, breath sharp. "What happened?" he asked, voice low. Mara peeled off the wet coat. "I asked Ada for work." Elias nodded. "She turned you down?" "No, she gave me a needle and 2 shirts to mend. Watched me like she knew my answers already." Silence stretched. Elias poured tea, set it beside her. She didn't touch it, just stared into the fire. "There's a price to being seen," she said, "and I ain't figured if I can afford it." The wind rattled the windows. "Creed found me," she added. Alias's jaw tensed. "Tried to grab my arm in the street. Said I made him look a fool. Said if I wanted to eat without him, I better prove I ever existed." "Did he hurt you?" "No. A beat. Not this time." Elias set a second cup before her. "You're safe here." She shook her head. "No one's safe, Elias. They're just tolerated or gone." The fire popped, embers cracking. She stared, waiting for it to confess. That night, she took the floor again. Not from fear, maybe habit, maybe because comfort felt unearned. Elias let her peacefully. Morning came, and she was outside, splitting wood, coat open, sleeves rolled, swings sloppy but fierce. He approached. "You're gonna wreck your wrist." "I ain't breaking, just burning." He reached for the axe. She jerked it away. "Mara." She stared him down, eyes glassy, then dropped the axe into the snow, shoulders curling inward like her rage had folded her. Elias picked it up, didn't swing, just held it. "You ever had something done to you so long," she whispered, "that even when it stops, you wake up choking on it?" He didn't speak. "I don't want to be scared anymore." He nodded. "Then stop swinging like someone else's ghost is in your arms." She laughed, sharp, breathless. "You think I can let go that easy?" "No," he said. "I think you've already started." That night, she cooked cornbread and stew, moving in the kitchen like she was carving a place for herself, one spoonful at a time. Elias watched. After supper, she resumed stitching a sleeve, thread sliding smoothly through steadier fingers. Elias asked, "You ever think of leaving for good?" Her eyes stayed on the fabric. "I did. Every day. Till you untied my hands. Now I'm thinking." He nodded. "That's more than most folks do." The next day, Mara returned to Ada's shop, shoulders squared, hair pinned, wearing the flannel tucked into a hemmed skirt, stitched from scraps but hers, a quiet flag that didn't beg notice but refused to vanish. People stared. She didn't look away. Ada gave her a table in the back, a stack of mending, and said, "Your hands are quick." They were. A week passed. Creed kept his distance, but rumors grew. Elias was living with a woman who didn't belong, a kept debt. Lucky he hadn't sent her back. Elias ignored them until Deputy Brandt rode up, hat low, voice soft. "Elias, there's talk, there's always talk. This kind's louder. They say you stole property." "She's not property. Don't matter what she is to you. Harlan's pulling the law in. Then let him come himself. He will, with court papers. You need proof she was mistreated. She was tied up in a stall." "Did you see it?" Alice's silence answered, "It ain't about truth, Elias. It's about who folks believe." When Brandt left, Mara was on the porch, having heard enough to know injustice's rhythm. "I'll go," she said. "I won't drag you through a mess." "You didn't drag me. I don't want to be why your neighbors spit when they see you. They already do. Just over other things." Mara looked at her hands. "It's never gonna end, is it?" Alice stayed quiet, then held out the papers Harlan had brought, signed by her stepbrother, crumpled but legible. "I didn't burn these," he said, "because I knew you'd want to." She stared, reached for them, fingers shaking, then steadying. She held the edge over the fire. It caught slowly, curling inward like it feared destroying something so dreaded. As it blackened to ash, she watched every fragment. Elias watched her. When she turned, her face wasn't smiling, but freer, not healed, but no longer feigning brokenness. That night, she sang. Not a lullaby, but a rough-edged tune about rivers and women crossing alone. Her voice cracked, but didn't stop. Elias sat in the doorway, listening. One lays on the porch rail. When she finished, he said her name. Mara. Like it held more than a wound. She turned. I don't need you to stay, he said. But I'd like to build you a room if you do. She blinked, not surprised, but recognizing something deeper. Then, soft as snowfall. Elias, I never asked to be rescued. I know, he said, but I wouldn't mind being remembered. He fetched his hammer, and that was how the fire caught. Not in sparks alone, but with two people building walls to hold warmth, not secrets. If you've met someone who didn't try to fix you, just held a door till you were ready to walk through, you know, sometimes the fire you couldn't light needed only a match. The ski hung low that morning, swollen with unshed snow, light filtering thin, casting a hush before judgment or revelation. Mara walked Main Street in Elias's wife's red coat, hem brushing her boots, shoulders straight, arms forward. People stared, not because she looked wild, not because she was bruised. Those marks had faded. They stared because she didn't lower her gaze, because she dared walk like she belonged. The coat, clinging like it remembered another body, was warm and hers, not by gift but survival. She passed the Mercantile, the Post, the silent church bell, whispers trailing like leaves in wind. She's the one who ran from Creed. I heard she's got the rancher reft. She was nothing when she got here. Still is. Mara didn't flinch, her face not defiant, just dignified, heavy, deliberate. She entered Ada Morrow's shop, the bell jangling like a warning. Ida looked up, glanced at the clock, nodded to the mending in the back. You're early. Had something to prove, Mara replied, shrugging off the coat, folding it neatly. Ada watched, listening and quiet. You'll have to prove it again tomorrow. I plan to. The room stilled. Needles scattered like whiny bayonets. Outside, murmurs grew. Around noon, Harlan Creed walked into town. Calm, sleepy, righteous, like the town owed him silence. He saw Mara through the shop window, marched in without knocking, the bell screaming as he pushed through. There you are, he snarled. Mara froze, fingers mid-thread. Ada set her scissors down slowly. You think you can humiliate me? Harlan said. You think you can show your face like you didn't steal from me? You're still mine, girl. Mara rose, not fast, not trembling. I'm not yours. Harlan reached for her, a grab, not a touch. The door opened again. Elias stood there, canvas coat dusted with snow, boots wet from the creek, hands empty but presence heavy. He didn't shout, didn't draw, just stepped between them. She told you no, Elias said. She's a liar, Harlan scoffed. She's a stray you were keeping like a dog, calling it charity. Elias stared, his quiet in armor. Then why you so scared of her walking through town? People gathered outside, no longer pretending, watching through windows. Breath held. I have signed paper, Harlan said, pulling a crumpled sheet. Legal claim. Ada stepped from behind the counter. I saw you drag her into that stall 2 months ago. No shoes, bolted the door from outside. That's slander. Then sue me. Another voice joined. Mrs. Norling from the bakery. I saw you pass an envelope to that deputy, more than a horse's worth. Y'all are making a mistake, Harlan spat. Elias's voice was quiet, dangerous. You already did. The bell jingled. Deputy Brandt stepped in, ledger under arm, sweat beading. I got new orders, he said. County judge reviewed the affidavit. Harlan Creed, you're to come with me. Harlan's mouth opened, shut. He looked around, realizing no one stepped forward. Not the grocer, not the pastor, not the law. Mara didn't smile, didn't speak, just stepped back, watched him leave, watched her fear shrink into a Manon who couldn't stand sunlight. Elise turned, held her gaze, didn't touch her, didn't need to. Outside, the town stilled, not with fear, but with reckoning. Ida returned to her counter, Mrs. Norling to her bread. Life resumed, but something had shifted. Mara picked up her red coat, folded it over her arm, walked outside, not hiding. Elias followed, a step behind, not her guard, her equal. They reached the wagon. Snow fell, soft as sifted flour. She paused, looked at the horizon where gray sky met white field, then turned to him. "Why did you follow me that day?" He took a long breath. "Because some things don't need a reason, just a right moment." She nodded. They stood in the stillness, letting the cold bite, the silence settle. If you've watched someone walk through fire and come out carrying only their name, you know what Elias knew. You don't save a woman like that. You walk beside her until she believes she was never lost. The sky broke open the day Mara chose to stay. Snow fell since dawn, thickly silent, blanketing every fence post, every shingle, every board in the barn that once held her like a coffin. By midday, the land looked reborn, clean, hushed, holy as only winter can be. She stood by the fence, breath clouding, watching hills blur into white. Elias chopped wood nearby, sleeves rolled, sweat darkening his collar. Neither spoke. Words felt like bridges not always needing crossing. She didn't say she wasn't leaving. He didn't ask. But he saw her tin comb by the wash basin, her boots drying by the fire, not near the door but beside his. Her hand-stitched curtains from old linen, quiet claims. That evening, she found him in the barn, hammering a new beam into the frame of the once broken stall. "Fixing it for a new horse?" she asked. He paused, turned, eyes soft but unreadable. "No." She stepped closer, the barn smelling of old wood and snow melt. Her hand traced the beam, smooth, clean. Thought maybe it should be something else now. Like what? A pantry? Root cellar? Maybe a cradle? Depends what the house needs next. She didn't laugh, but her face softened, a thaw beneath the skin. Her fingers rested flat against the beam. "I don't want to be someone you rescued. You're not. I don't want pity or charity." He set the hammer down. "You ever seen me hand out either?" Mara looked at him, not sizing him up, not fearing danger, but seeing what happens next. "I didn't come here to be yours," she whispered, "but I don't want to leave and forget you either." Alicia stepped closer, the cold warming between them. "I don't want you to be mine," he said. "I want you to be here, if that's what you want." Her breath hitched. "Can you build something with someone?" she asked, "even when both of you are still broken in places?" "Only then," he said. "That's the only way it holds." That night, they didn't talk much. She made supper, beans, cornbread, something sweet with dried apples, and he stoked the fire until it danced like it had waited years to be seen. They ate in companionable silence, the kind that fills, not empties. Later, she folded his wife's wedding shawl from the window hook, pressed it into a drawer, not to erase the woman before, but to make space for the woman after. He noticed, said nothing. On the porch, he left the door open. A small thing she felt like an invitation. Snow had stopped, moonlight glazing fields in silver. She stood beside him, looking not at what was taken, but what could be built. "Elias," she said after sense, "if I stayed, really stayed, what would you want from me?" He watched the wind swirl through trees, then met her gaze, steady. "A name on the deed, a cup on the shelf, a hand I can reach for when the night gets long. Nothing more." She exhaled, trembling. "That's everything." He nodded. In the cabin's warmth, she brushed her hair by the fire, as she had when no one watched. Only now someone did. Elias sat across, hands on knees, witnessing without claiming. She smiled, small, crooked. He slid a folded paper toward her. A deed, half the land, half the house, signed with his name. I didn't do anything to deserve this, she said. No one ever does, he replied. That's why it means something. The wind howled, but inside was quiet. Her hands trembled, folding the paper beside her plate. He didn't ask if she'd stay. She had. That night, she slept in the bed, he on the floor just once more, because some transitions need grace. Morning came, and he was beside her, clothed, boots on. But there. She didn't pull away. They lay, eyes on the wood ceiling. You ever think some people were never meant to be saved? She said. Just held until they could stand? He met her gaze. That's the only kind I've ever trusted. The fire crackled. Fresh snow glistened outside. But inside, something landed. If you've mistaken a roof for a home, or a house for safety, you know, a home ain't always walls. Sometimes it's the silence that heals, the man who builds a door you can close from inside. The red coat by that door, worn, befaded. Proof you walked through something alone and came out whole. So if you find someone who sees you not for what you were, but what you're becoming, stay. You've found the kind of home that can't burn.